Hi everyone, welcome. I'm Sarah from Handmade After Dark, and it is Tuesday evening, 8 o'clock. So this is my weekly online class to go. So I will just switch my camera around and show you what we're going to make tonight. There we go. All right, so this week we are using the Notes and Totes bundle. So with this one, you've got the stamp set that goes along with it, and then the die set. And this one you get a lot of dies. So you've got the tote bag, lots of accessories to go with it, sunglasses, starfish shells. These are the fence posts that you may have seen a lot of people making cards with. So there's a lot in this one. So there are, particularly for the first card, there are quite a few die cut pieces. They've all got a few die cut pieces, but that's all right. So just a reminder for anyone who has forgotten or isn't familiar with the online class, if you place an order of $75 or more in my online store, so that's before shipping and after any Stampin' Rewards redemption, I will send you the kit for this week's class. And so you get kits to make 2 of each of the 3 designs. So 6 card kits in total, and I will send those out to you. And just a reminder, I don't send the actual die cuts from the featured bundle. If there are any other die cuts used, so say the stylish shapes for this one, I will send that die cut, and I'll send any DSP or cardstock you need to do the die cutting from the dies, but I don't send the actual die cuts themselves, largely because, as a general rule, a lot of the time, if you send the die cut, then it's very difficult to actually stamp, particularly if it's, say a flower or something like that, where it's a specific shape. And if you don't have that particular stamp set and you're using something else, it's not particularly helpful. So I send the cardstock, and then you can stamp and die cut with whatever you have if you don't have this particular bundle. There actually is going to be a slight exception to that for next week, but I'll get to that later. So to start with, we will go with this one. So the kit for this one, so this one has a Lost Lagoon card base, and then we have some crumb cake cardstock, 2 pieces of basic white. Now just bear in mind that the cardstock, the 2 pieces of white, are slightly different sizes. One is for the insert, that's the larger one, and the smaller one is the one that we're going to do the ink blending on. So just make sure you double check which is which before you start. So I'm going to put that larger one out of the way so I don't accidentally do what I just told you not to do and blend on the wrong one. Hello, Renee. Thank you for joining. Nice to see you again. And so then I have lots of little die cuts to go with it. I will actually put all those back for the moment just so I don't lose them. And we will start with the ink blending. And so what we need to do for this one, let me just grab some, no, this one will do. So we're doing 2 lots. We want the top part, which is going to be the sky, and I'm going to grab some removable adhesive just to hold this in place. And so we just want about maybe that much, and I'll get some new tape for this. I think this is this was the piece I used for my sample card, because I can tell from the ink that's on it. So let's get this down, and hopefully things will stay still. So for the top part, I'm going to use Pool Party and Butter Blue. And for this one, yeah, we want to keep it fairly light. I will start with the Balmy Blue. Just want to make sure I stay in camera. Alrighty. So just start light. You can build up as you go, but you can't take it away. So just light circular motions. I'm going to go all over with the Balmy Blue, and we'll just build that up. And then we'll add in a bit of Pool Party as well once we start to build this up. You do want to try and make sure that that both the cardstock you are blending on and the paper that you are using to hold it down, that they're both secure and they don't start moving around. So removable tape is very, very useful for this. All right, let's add in a bit of Pool Party now. And we're not going to go too dark because we don't need too much. We just want to add a little bit of depth of color. And we can always add more. So just make sure one area that can get missed a bit is edges and corners. So just check that you've done all the edges and corners. I reckon that's probably about enough. Could do a bit more there, but and also just watch that you don't have tape over the bit that you are trying to add the ink to. So just add a bit more there just to make sure that doesn't get missed. All right. Now we shall take that off. And then just move these out of the way. We want to go the other way. So we want to basically cover up what we just did. So you do want to be careful to line it up as best you can. Make sure it's even, or as even as you can get. Now I've just got little bits of fluff everywhere. All right, that should be good. And then we're going to do the same colors, but we're also going to add in some Lost Lagoon, so that'll give some of that darker. But I'll start with Pool Party for this one, just because that's the one I was using. And for this one, doesn't matter too much how far down you go, as long as it's far enough that you're going to cover the area that isn't going to be covered by the crumb cake cardstock. So it doesn't matter if you go too far, just as long as you go far enough, it's all good. If you go further, doesn't matter. So I'm just going to go a bit further than I know I will need, just to make sure it's all covered. All right, let's add a bit of, let's go back and add some balmy blue in. Remember with this one, you don't want everything completely perfectly blended in and all even all the way through. You do want some variation in the color throughout this one. It also means that every card will be slightly different. All right, I think it's about time to add some Lost Lagoon in. Let's make sure it's not too dark to start. And I do recommend that you hold down both bits of paper as you work, even though we have taped it down, but I still recommend just holding it down just in case they do move around. And also sometimes the paper may accidentally sort of flick the paper up and then get ink that you don't want underneath where you've blended. So it can be a good idea to just hold it down. Needs to be a bit smoother for my liking. Still need the variation, just blended better. But I also don't want to keep you here all night. And even if you think when you've done it that it's not looking as good as you might like, you will probably find that once you start to put everything together, it does change how it looks, and quite likely what you thought maybe didn't look all that good actually looks better than you think. So I'm going back in with just a little bit of Pool Party around the edge here. And I might actually go with a little bit of balmy blue just around the edges. And then before I take all that off, I'm going to double check. I'm going to tear the cardstock at the top, but that should still fit nicely. And I will actually just double check before I take all that off, just in case. So I'm using the Crumb Cake two-tone cardstock. So you've got the darker side and the lighter side. I want to use the lighter side for this one. But I think when I did this, I didn't, yeah. So I don't actually want the white side showing for this. So when you're tearing two-tone cardstock, if you tear it towards you, you will get the white showing. If you tear it away, then you don't get the white. So because I find it just easier to tear towards me, I'm just flipping it over so that this side won't have the white showing, because that's the side that I want to use. So I'm just going to tear this, and it doesn't have to be, don't have to do anything fancy with this one. Part of it's going to be hidden anyway. Just want to give a little bit of texture to the edge. And so flip that over, and I will make sure that that is going to cover everything, and I don't need, yep, that looks good. We will add some stamping to that, but let's close these up, and we should probably check how it's actually looking before we, yep, that's about what I had, similar to the, yeah, so you can see there, and that's going to be mostly hidden, so it's not too bad, but there is a little white gap. I am going to just, because I'm very pedantic, even though most of this is going to be hidden, I do want just a little, let's just add a little bit. Mostly going to be hidden anyway, but there we go, that's better. I can still see it, but it's not so obvious. All right. Let's carefully take that off, even though it should be fine. I'll leave that there because I'm going to, actually, no, I won't. I'm going to get a new one just because that's got, well, it's not wet ink, but it can, that ink can sort of come off onto other stuff when particularly when you've been blending. So, all right, let's get stamping. So the crumb cake two-tone, I'm going to grab the crumb cake ink and the texture stamp from the stamp set, and we're just going to, now let me just check. Yeah, couldn't remember if I had stamped off or not with this one. I may have somewhat, but, and with this one, it doesn't matter too much. Doesn't have to be perfect. You just want to stamp all over. And a lot of this is going to be covered anyway, so it's not super critical, but, and then what I'm going to do as well is I'm just going to come in with my light crumb cake blend, and I'm just going to very lightly just add a little bit of extra texture, bit of color on around the edge. And this bit is totally optional. It was just something I did with the first one. So I'm like, yeah, why not? Totally optional, this bit. And it will, if you're thinking it looks a little bit too dark at the moment, it will lighten as it dries. So that's fine. I wouldn't recommend using the dark crumb cake for this one. Definitely go the light. Now, before we stick that down, we need to stamp the sentiment. So I'm using the, sorry, Relax and Enjoy, and I'm going to use Secret Sea ink for this one. And as I like to do, just make sure it's all looking okay. that off to the side, and then what we will do, where's my, there it is. We will add this. Actually, before I add that, I'm going to add this one down first, just in case. I shouldn't need to, but just in case I needed to trim it off, but I don't think that's going to be necessary. So just want to line this one up with the bottom of this piece. Just make sure you haven't got any white showing at the bottom. There we go. All right, let's add that to that one. I'll just double check I've got the right measurements. I do work a few weeks ahead, so I always like to double check that I did actually cut the correct size at the time, because it wouldn't be the first time that I've cut the wrong size. We all do. Alrighty, let's get that one down. Make sure it's even borders. There we go. And we will add this to the base. Move that out of the way. Okay. Actually, we do have a little bit more stamping to do, but not much. That's all right. We will do that once we get this bit together. There we go. All right. Now we have all these little bits, and there are some very small bits in here. So including this tiny little one, which I am actually going to, I'm going to put this one together now, just because I'm going to lose it. This would definitely be one to use the adhesive sheets for, but I didn't. Surprise, surprise, I forgot. So I just want to get this. Oh, it doesn't. It's another reason why adhesive sheets are a very useful option. I just want that on so it doesn't disappear on me. Now, so this is how the tote die comes out. And then, oops, wrong way around. We've got this piece for the bottom of the bag, and we have these strips for the top. So because we're not making a sort of a 3D tote, we don't need all of it. So I'll just fold all of these just so you can see how it will look. And then so you would, you know, if you're doing a 3D tote, you would get, you know, you've got the other one. But we just need that. So you can either cut the edges off, or I prefer to just fold them over and not cut them off. I find that you get a much cleaner edge, and you also don't have to worry about whether you've cut straight or not. The only part I'm actually going to cut off is this little bit here, because that bit we don't need. The rest of it, I'm just going to fold under, and I will just add a little bit of adhesive just so that it sticks down, particularly while I'm trying to add the other embellishments to it. I should probably get my silicone sheet out so that I don't end up sticking bits and pieces I don't want to paper and then tearing it. So this piece sits at the bottom, and then these two strips sit at the sides. Now let me just check. Yeah, so they go basically right where the skyline is. So they need to go down first before this one. Sorry, I just realized I'm just going to adjust my camera so slightly, just because I keep ending up a bit out of range, and I'll move everything forward a bit. So you do have lots of little pieces with this, so I do highly recommend using adhesive sheets. For these, it is much, much easier, and you're also less likely to end up with, covered in bits of glue and trying to stick things down while it's trying to stick to you and all that fun stuff. So definitely use adhesive sheets for this if you can. I remembered afterwards, of course, but nothing new there. And then I've just gone and stuck that to myself. This is why you want to use adhesive sheets. And I actually do have them, I actually brought them up here and have them sitting over to the side so that I would, in theory, remember to use them. But it seems that hasn't quite worked. I mean, occasionally I remember, but not enough. Not enough. All right. So that one is going across the bottom. And I'm just going to make sure that there is nothing extra showing at the bottom. That'll be hidden. That's fine. And then we want to add this one. So just remember, with this piece, you don't want to add glue to the whole thing. Just this bottom section. So just be careful with that one. All right, so there's that bit down. Now we need to do some stamping, just a tiny bit. So bring this back in. We're just going to stamp this one, and I'm using the sort of big flower stamp, and I'm just going to stamp over that. So I'm using crushed curry for this one. It's not looking great. That might need. Let's see if it's. Let's see how well this one stamps. It's a very old stamp pad. All right, let's get some of that excess ink off. I'll just clean that. I think it's time for a new one. It's a very old stamp. I'm just gonna. I don't need too much of the flowers anyway, because there's only a tiny bit that's even going to be visible. So that's fine. That's all I need. Yeah, definitely time to use that one, I think. Let's just give that a clean, because I'm going to need that for the next one, I think. Completely different color. So let's bring this back in. And so we're going to add this sitting about there, and we want the drink bottle and this one to sit behind. So I'm going to decide where I want those and stick those down first. Just remembering that I don't need to, actually I do probably want a little bit of adhesive on most of this one. But I'll just keep that in place while I decide how far out that's going to sit. That's fine there. And then we will add this one. So sit that behind, bring that one down. Oops. One of the advantages of the green glue is you do get that extra time, and then we can add this one. I might stick a bit more glue behind there just so that that does stick properly. And make sure there's some on the side there as well. And we'll just make sure that it's on an angle and if room doesn't cover up the sentiment. So both of the DSPs for this one come from the Regal's DSP pack. So this one is crushed curry. And then these little guys are in petal pink. The dies from this set are really good for using up little scraps of cardstock, and I have a lot. So I do, as much as it's can be fiddly, you do get to use up all your scraps, which is a good thing. Well, maybe not all of them, some of them. All right, then all we need to do is add some embellishments, and I'm using the Riverside Irregular Pearls. These are actually on the last chance list. So if you want some of these, then I do recommend ordering sooner rather than later. I'm not sure what the status is in terms of how much inventory is left, but if you do like these and want these ones, then I do recommend sooner rather than later. And I think they're on the last chance list, so they are most likely on sale as well. So you'll get them a bit cheaper. And the last chance list has just been updated. So there's a whole lot of new stuff on there. So if there are any stamp sets, dies, embellishments, whatever that you're after, go and check out and see if they are on the last chance list. They are probably discounted. There is also a sale on in color, the 2025 to 2027 in color products, and it's not just the specific in color, like the cardstock, the blends, that sort of stuff. That stuff is on special, but also a lot of the other products like designer series papers that include those colors, that sort of thing. A lot of those are on special as well. All right, there is the first one done. So we put that one aside and move to the second one. So this was the second one. So this one uses the same dies. The difference with this one is simply that rather than using the full tote, we cut it down to a shopping bag. And again, I've used the Regal's DSP pack for this one. There's some fresh free cardstock embossed with the eyelet embossing folder. And then so we have Gorgeous Grape, Blueberry Bushel, and Real Red for the bags. We've got a Stylish Shapes sentiment label. We'll do all the stamping first. And Basic Beige for the label. Secret Sea, that these could go as either headphones or bag handles. I'm using this bag handles. So let's do the stamping first. And hopefully I don't mess this one up, because this one I'm using the same stamp as before, but I just want one of these little flowers. So let's see how well this goes. We're finding practice, but you know, practice is kind of different to trying to do it live. So let's see how this goes. So I'm just going to try and ink up just the one flower and try and actually get all of it. So that looks all right. I think just making sure I haven't got ink on. It can be very hard to avoid those edges, but let's give it a go. Let's see how we go. Excuse my head if it gets in the way. Yeah, it worked. And still need so colorful sentiment is from the Beautiful Butterflies set. So I used this a few weeks back. So I'm just using the Happy Birthday sentiment from that one. So let's just check that that's looking, let's make sure I've got this labeled the right way around and somewhat straight. Again, apologies for my head if it ends up in the camera view. There we go. Close that up before I end up with ink everywhere. And we will put that to the side for the moment, and that, and hope I don't lose it all. All right. So now, similar to the first card, We don't need the whole thing, and we need slightly less than in the previous one. So we just need this part, but I'm going to do the same thing I did for the first one. And rather than cutting off at the edge, I'm just going to fold it under because it's much cleaner. I'm going to cut these little bits off. Now, if you wanted to, you could cut the extra section there. I'm just going to leave them. It adds, yeah, it does add a tiny bit of bulk to the cut, but at the same time, it also kind of makes it look a bit more realistic as a bag. That makes sense. Looks more like a bag than just, you know, a square or a rectangle of paper. The lines are a lot smoother, and that little bit of bulk just, you know, does tend to look a bit nicer. Just make sure that you've, you know, cut off enough on the bottom that it will all fold over. So you may want to cut, you know, a tiny bit more off the edge here, just so that it just gives you that little extra room. This is totally optional, and it will depend, yeah, largely depends on personal preference. I'll just hold those, see how they're, yeah, I'm just gonna, it does just make it that little bit easier. Help if I could see what I'm doing. All right, now I'll do same thing as before and just add a little bit of glue to stick the sides down. See this one. Stick that down there rather than having to press it closed and hold it. I'll just use the weight of the block to do it for me. Otherwise, you would have to sit and watch me do that, which no one wants to do. All righty. And go to the next one and the last one. And see, what a reasonably heavy one that'll do. That's fine. It's just to keep it down a little bit. It's not super urgent. Alrighty. So let's get this going. So we will stick this one down. And remember, with the embossed ones, you can use either side of the cardstock. So if you prefer the debossed look, you can absolutely use that side instead. There's no reason you have to use this side. So go with what you prefer. All right. Now, let's start. So we want the black ones going down first, and let's just check that these are all fitting roughly where we want them. So we want to make sure they're within the borders. Also make sure you've got room to add the handles and that they will sit within the borders. So I actually might just stick, just so we can be sure. Let's just stick those down. And I'll do the same for this one. And I mean, realistically, I might as well just do it for all of them. But doing it for these ones mainly to get a better idea of where it's going to sit and make sure it sits not on my fingers, preferably. Make sure it's going to sit where we want it to sit. All right, and let's do this last one. Okay. All righty, so we want to make sure that that is going to sit there. That one's going to sit there. Let's just adjust slightly, make sure they're sitting, and then that will sit over the middle. All right, so let's put this one down first. Just a tiny bit. Just one little bit on that. No doubt I will have added far too much. I always do, but we can deal with that. All right, let's get that one down. There we go. Just press that down lightly. I'm going to hold that down. This one is going to sit over the top slightly. There we go. That's in line. All good there. And then this sits down there. That's all looking good. Tiny bit for the handle, no doubt far too much, but we're used to that by now. Tiny bit more under there just to keep it stuck. All right, and this is going right down towards the bottom. Then we will add the sentiment. So we'll put that up on some dimensionals. I've got some mini ones here. Ready. Get those backings off, and I just realized I probably didn't need, we'll see. Potentially don't need it on this end, but we'll see how it goes. Just because this side is already up, but yeah, I think that works. It's fine. All right. Now the fun part for me. Baker's twine. Baker's twine is not my best friend. So I'm using the Essentials Baker's twine pack, and so I'm using the basic black for this one. Oh, let's get you down slightly. Don't mind if that one's up a bit. Don't want it up too far. Let's get this one through if I can. And just there so we can get that through a bit easier, and then get it through. All right, that's the first part done. And now for the second one, so we're going to tie a bow and add that, and then add the tag to that. So we'll just make this a bit smaller. Oop. Try not to make a mess. Twine and I are not the best of friends. And yet I keep using it. Go figure. I do like it, I just struggle to use it because I don't always have the best movement in my hand, especially when it's cold. All right, let's see if I can, this may not work. I may just go with the old option of just whacking it down rather than trying to tie it. Let's see if I can get this through. Oh, yep, looks like it may kind of work. Close enough. Let's just trim that down. That's good enough for me. My glue dots here. Oh, that's right. I have a couple of spares, so I'm just going to add glue dot to the back of the twine, and we'll stick that down, and I'm going to stick it just slightly up from the bottom of that, just because I want to put an embellishment there. So where are they? Here we are. I am using the adhesive sparkly back gems. These are also last chance list. And I'm going to use some of the black ones on the bag handles. I figured these ones worked well, and it was a good chance to start using. Oh, where'd they go? I might grab another one. I'll fix that one up later. And then now, which ones do I want to use? I'm running out. I do have more though. we will go with, oh, that's it. Let's go with a mix, 2 gold, 1 silver. Why not? Just because that's what I happen to have right here, right now. So why not? All right. And we probably need to add the insert. Can't forget that one. Really shouldn't do that on my glass mat, only because I then have to clean it off. Silicone mat's much easier. And I need a bit more down there. Alrighty. Yep, excess off. There we go. And there is the second one. All right. Last one. And I know this is going to be a slightly longer class this week. These are somewhat more involved projects, not massively, but now this final one, normally I have the embossing and stuff done beforehand, but I deliberately didn't for this one because I wanted to show you how I did it. So I've used the Pool Party two-tone, and then I've embossed. I've used the Soft Waves embossing folder, but when I was designing it and making it, I realized that because you want the embossing folder to go through, you want the folded edge to go through first. But with the design of the card, if you put the paper in straight, it's not really going to work in terms of the way it works. So you basically want the cardstock on an angle so that you've got the lines are sort of on that angle. Problem is with the size of the cardstock that you need, if you do it as one full sheet, you won't actually be able to fit it through because it will come out the edges. So what you need to do, very simple. First of all, decide which side you want showing, the dark or the light. I want the light side showing. And so the first piece, this first piece here, that's going to be your biggest one. And so you just want to tear and just roughly, work out. And I've probably made this one a bit too small, I think, but we'll work that. Let's see. That could almost work. Let's try with the second one. We can always get more, and we can always adjust. Okay, so that looks a bit better. We don't need the whole thing. So we will probably, from about here, I'm going to start to tear that going this way, just to shorten it. And that's looking a bit better, probably not quite as long as I ideally want it, but it will do. And then, so the next one will sit sort of, a bit further back, and this will come. Now let's just work this out. I did this a while ago, so got to try and remember exactly how I did it. And I probably messed that up, but let's see. So that one will sit about there, and obviously we'll bring that back in. And then this one is going to be a lot smaller. It's a bit smaller than I'd like, but we can come back to this piece. And in the kit, you will get 2 pieces of the cardstock to work with. So that, if we go that one, that one, that one, and we'll just adjust bits and pieces slightly so it all fits nicely. So if that one is coming to there, we want this one to probably sit about there, and then we can just trim that off. That's fine. And that one will sit there. Now we do, I'm just trying to think. Yeah, we'll just cut that off. That's fine. So these are the pieces we're going to use for this one. We can use these for something else. And then, and hopefully I get this right the first time so that you don't have to watch me do it again and again and again. Now I need plate 1 and plate 4. So I think that these pieces are sitting, basically that's going to sit there. We want to think about how we want the score lines to look. So if we think that's, and out of view, that's not very helpful, sorry. If we think that's sort of facing down, that's, about what we want, that will do. But just remember to put it back in this way. And then we are going to put these on we can do these next 2 together. They will probably, so we'll just check and make sure that that's about where we want it. I will just move that one up slightly. Oop. Try and keep it in. And yeah, that'll do. That will do. Oop. So let's get these out. And just this down to the side. And put that aside. I'm going to bring that back up just before I end up losing everything. All right, so this one is actually a relatively simple card. So we want that first piece is going to sit right up against the edges. And then this second one is going to sit back ever so slightly, and it's going to sit about there. And I will, before I stick the larger piece down, I'm going to stick this one down and trim off the end. Let me just make sure that I've got that straight. I just want to make sure everything is going to align. And then we can trim. Let's just trim now and make sure it's actually going to look the way I think it is, and I'm not going to mess this up. Yeah, that's fine. All right, so I can actually then just, I will start with this one. Now, one thing actually, before I start to stick, we're going to add a little bit of color to these elements. And one of the reasons I want to do this before we stick everything down is because you can see in the original one, they are sitting just under, a couple of them are just under, so I don't want to stick everything right down and then go to do those and realize that I can't actually do that. You may notice that my one little starfish is missing a little bit. That's fine. I was just cutting it from a very small scrap. There was a bit of space. That's fine, because that bit is going to sit under some of the other cardstocks. So that is always an option if you go to die cut something and then you realize that it didn't quite cut fully because either your die happened to move, which does happen, or your piece just wasn't quite as big as you thought. That's when you just hide those bits behind others. And there is absolutely nothing wrong with doing that. So I'm just going to add, so I'm just using a little bit of crumb cake ink just to add a bit of color to these. You can just very rough, it doesn't have to be particularly precise. You're just giving it a little bit of color, a bit of extra dimension. So, just whatever you feel like. Alrighty, let's move those over there and we can start sticking this one together. I know this has been a bit longer than it normally is. Actually, I just realized there's a bit more stamping we need to do, and it's better to do it beforehand for this one. So again, crumb cake, very simple, just the that texture image that we used in the first one. We are just going to stamp that all over, and you can do some stamping off. It doesn't all have to be sort of full strength. You can do a mix, and again, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just want, and you can go further than you need to, because it doesn't matter if it's covered, as long as you've got some sort of in all the bits that will be somewhat exposed. And seeing as we're here, we may as well do the sentiment after this. So I think that, let's check that down. Yep, that is plenty. I'm just going to add a tiny bit more in there just because that will do. Then secret C for the sentiment, and I'm using the sending warm wishes stamp, and I'll just double check it's all working, or stamping as I want. Yep, all good. All right, so this is just going down the bottom there. And that to the side. Now we can stick this down. Fine. All right. So I'm going to do this one, turn this around, just makes it a bit easier because we do want to line this up with the score line and the top. And so I'm just going to slide that up and make sure it's all the way across. I'm not going to press down too much on, oh, come on. to adjust slightly. It didn't quite come all the way up to the top. Let's try that again. This is why I like the green glue. All right, that looks better. But that looks better, she says, as she pulls the entire thing off. Let's just take that off. It's all good. This is all going to be covered. No one's going to see this. It's just not lined up quite the way I want. That's better. But that is not. Why is that not lining up? I think that is just going. Yep, that's going to have to do. That is good enough. It is close enough. And I will stick this guy down. Or I completely stick this down just so he stays. All right, and then for this second one, we just want to make sure that both the top edge line up and that side edge. Excuse the glue all over my fingers. And I'm going to just flip this around. I just find it a little easier when trying to line up the top and sides. So that will go down, and then I may as well leave it there for the final one. So that's just going in the corner. We're nearly there. Nearly there. And that one's going right up to the edge there. And I need to add this little guy is going and making sure I put the semi-broken or slightly shorter bit underneath. So there we go. No one can tell. And I think, oh yes, I did put that one up on a dimensional. So let's just grab a mini dimensional. My hands are covered in glue right now, so everything is sticking. Just not quite where I want things sticking, but yes, I've got, there we go. Alrighty, now let's very quickly add the insert and then we will embellish. So I'm going to use the same embellishments I used on the first card. So those, the Riverside, the irregular pearls. So those work well with this bundle. And I do really like them. I'm a bit disappointed they've gone on last chance list, but everything ends up on last chance list eventually. All right, so let's just, I'm just going to go with some of these small ones. Go, press all that down. And there we go, card number 3. Let's bring all of these back in. Where's my first? No, that's my first one. Where's my second one? There's my second one. Alrighty, so those are the 3 cards from this week's online class to go. The ordering period for this week's class is open until Saturday. And I'll just switch my camera back. Now, I mentioned earlier in relation to the die cuts for the bundle, and I said it would be slightly different for next week. So next week's bundle is the For the Books bundle, which is on last chance, and it has been for a while. I've just had a look. The dies are now gone. The stamp set is still available. The dies are gone. So for anyone who does place an order for next week's class, so that will start next Monday, only one of the 3 cards uses the dies, but I will include the die cuts from the dies for that one. There's no, they're ones that can easily, one of them has stamping on it, but it's, on essentially a square. So you're not going to have any issues with that. So that one I will include the dies from the bundle. So thank you so much for watching. Just quickly, I am, for anyone who is still watching this live, I am very shortly after I finish this, I'm going to do a test run to check that I can, that my setup is going to work to stream live to both Facebook and YouTube at the same time. So I'm going to do that after this. Also testing my new camera and a few other bits and pieces to make sure it's all working. And as my pre-order arrived yesterday and I haven't had a chance to open it yet, I figured I may as well do an unboxing as part of that test. So if you are still here watching live and you want to hang around for a bit, please do. If you do hang around to watch, please leave a comment, whether you're watching Facebook or YouTube. Leave a comment during the live. That is really helpful for me to know that things are working as I expect and that I can see the things I'm supposed to be seeing and all that sort of stuff. And you'll get to see some of the goodies from the new mini catalogue and online exclusives that will be live in September. So that will be providing everything works as I expect and hope it will. I will be doing that very soon. I'm just going to finish this, get the next lot set up and go live. So hopefully I will see you soon. If not, thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. I will see you next week. Have a great week. Bye.